طيب. The sound is good. Sound is good. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله. Sound is good. خيرا إن شاء الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, we'll try our best to take some questions bi'idhnillahi azza wa jal with regards to Ramadan and other than the month of Ramadan. One of the most important books for a student of knowledge, a student of hadith, and also someone studying fiqh, is to take the mutun of hadith, but also have the shuruhat, the commentary and the ta'liqat, the explanation and the commentary. And from those books, which are very important and very beneficial with regards to the commentary on Kutub al-Sitta, specifically Sunan Abi Dawud, is Awn al-Ma'bud lil-Azim Abadi rahimahullah ta'ala. Awn al-Ma'bud is not an extensive explanation of Abu Dawud. Ta'liqat is commentary, but it's kifaya wa ziyada. It's sufficiency and more. Sufficiency and more. It's not as robust as a Tamheed or as a Fath al-Bari, but it is more than what you need. So Awn al-Ma'bud, obviously it gains its importance and its status from the original work upon which it's commenting, and that is Sunan Abi Dawud. And Sunan Abi Dawud is one of the most important books of the Kutub al-Sitta and of the Kutub al-Hadith. And that is because it is considered to be Mawsu'atul Fuqaha. It's the encyclopedia of the jurists. It is the main source and the main reference for those who deal with fiqh, the halal, the haram, what to find, what the Messenger of Allah said and did and allowed regarding those issues. There's Bukhari, there's Muslim, there's Tirmidhi, there's Nasa'i, there's Muwatta Malik, but Sunan Abi Dawud is considered to be the prime source for Adillatul Ahkam, the proofs and the evidences for the halal, for the haram, and for the fiqh. So Sunan Abu Dawud is one of the most important books of Islam, let alone of hadith. And of course, this commentary, Awn al-Ma'bud, this is one version of the book. It's a bit older. They have newer copies, and they may have even older copies than this. This is volume 6. It's something that the student of hadith should always read, study, and have a familiarity with, even just to know how to get around and look into Sunan Abu Dawud, let alone the commentary. And in 9 out of 10 issues of halal and haram, you're going to find a hadith about it in Sunan Abi Dawud. 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10. You're going to find some narration, authentic or not, in Sunan Abi Dawud. And it's very important to understand what those narrations mean, what they prove, so on and so forth. So that's the first book that we like to introduce. After that, I would like to show a few gifts that I got. One is a bit older than the latest batch, alhamdulillah. This is a very interesting book here. It's called Deeper Roots: Muslims in the Americas and the Caribbean from before Columbus to the present, by Dr. Abdullah Hakim Quick. This book is called Deeper Roots, and the author, from his research, he's basically stating and proving is that there were Muslims in the Americas, North America, South America, the Caribbean, way before the advent of Christopher Columbus. Now, we're not here to discuss this. We're not here to talk about this. We're not here to mention no proofs or facts or theories regarding this. The reason why I'm showing you this book is to put you in the thought process of never accepting the basic narrative that you're being given and fed. Never just accept what the people tell you and say to you, but read, scratch beneath the surface, dig a bit deeper, and you'll oftentimes find many things that are supposed facts or actual lies. They're lies. And that is why some people call history his story. His story. The story of the conqueror, the story of the most wealthy, the story of the most powerful, the story of the one who had the least amount of shame and had no limits and boundaries in lying and just making things up to support a person's agenda. And when we talk about history in the books of history, we have to understand is that they are connected to one system, one body. You talk about the concept of Christian domination and the superiority of Christianity, the superiority of white Christians from Europe with regards to these different savage nations, okay, wherever they come from, Africa, Asia, wherever they are, nations which are considered to be savage in their terminology. They have to prove and establish their dominance through science, through war, through history, through discoveries, and the list goes on. So you have to understand that you pick up a book about science, evolution, you pick up a book about history, you pick up a book about this war, this battle, it's all connected. And you should never suffice yourself with what you're just given on a plate and a platter. Never suffice yourself with the popular narrative. But you need to, you yourself, read and scratch beneath the surface and look into the actual factual history. What's a fact? And not just what a person is feeding you. This applies to the worldly life, as I just said. And of course, without any doubt, this applies to Islam. This applies to Islam. And not just sufficing yourself what a person is giving and saying to you for agenda, propaganda. And a person just has shameless propaganda, feeding you something to make you follow them, obey them, listen to them, so on and so forth. So in this book, the author, he mentions all types of things that prove that Columbus was not the first person to reach the Americas from the old world, quote unquote. Okay? And it's very, very important for anyone who's an American. It's important if you're a Black American. It's important if you've migrated to the United States to know about this book. And it's also important if you don't live in the United States, because many people around the world, they lack thorough knowledge of true American history and heritage. And it has a huge impact on how they deal with Americans, let alone Black Americans in the United States. Very, very, very important. Who were the first people to reach this new place? Was it Columbus? Was it the Chinese? Was it Leif Erikson and the Vikings? Was it the African traders and explorers from West Africa? Musa Mansa? Was it the people who came from Turkey and Arabia? And the list goes on. Who really discovered this new land? And what's the proof and what's the evidence for that? And what impact does it have on the world today? And on the United States, Canada, Central America, the Caribbean, and South America today. So that's first and foremost. Afterwards, alhamdulillah, just got a good stack of books. But alhamdulillah, a good friend of mine, a brother, student of knowledge. I think he's too shy. I don't think he wants to be mentioned on camera. May Allah Azza wa Jalla reward him well for bringing back many of these beneficial books. Some of them I have and some of them I don't have. The first book says Al-Maghribiyya Sharh al-Aqeedah al-Qayrawaniya. Okay, the famous Aqeedah of the Qayrawan. We have Sifat Wudu al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Sharh Hadith Uthman Sheikh Abdul Aziz al-Tarifi, Al-Qawl al-Sadid fi al-Radi ala man ankara taqsim al-Tawheed, Shama'il al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Al-Hafidh Abi Isa Muhammad ibn Isa al-Tirmidhi, Tahqiq Dr. Mahir al-Fahl. Also the concept of Sharh Aqidat al-Raziyain, very famous book on Aqidah. Ibraz San'at al-Hadith fi Sahih Bukhari, Wajib al-Waqt as well. Taqrib Nuzhat al-Nadar. And last but not least is Sharh Muqaddimat Sahih Muslim of Sheikh Khudair. So these are beneficial books. As I said, some of them, alhamdulillah, I do have, and some of them it's my first time actually seeing, let alone actually having. So may Allah Azza wa Jalla reward you well. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow me to have the ability to read them and benefit from them and pay back the debt of the gift. May Allah bless you. Ameen. And alhamdulillah, book culture is an extremely integral and important part of disciplism. Buying books, reading books, studying books, reviewing books, critiquing books, and loving books. This is one of the most important things that we try to promote in Hadith Disciple, is to be connected with books. The books of benefit and the books which guide and the books which structure and develop the talib al-ilm. بإذن الله سبحانه وتعالى وجزاكم الله خيرا. تفضل.
Question from online, initials MS from Farwaniya, Kuwait. What is Husn al-Dhan Billah? Can you give some examples?
Question comes from Kuwait. What is Husn al-Dhan Billah? And can you give some examples? Husn al-dhan billah, it doesn't necessarily have one definition. Rather, there are different aspects of having good thoughts of Allah. First and foremost is what you believe about Allah, what you believe about Him and His names, His attributes, His actions. Subhanahu wa azza wa jal. Okay? And فَلَا تَضْرِبُوا لِلَّهِ الْأَمْثَالِ. Don't make examples with Allah, parables with Allah. Allah knows and you don't know. Don't make an example between Allah's names, Allah's attributes, Allah's actions, and those of His servants. Don't try to restrict Allah to that which restricts the created beings. All right, and a perfect example of this is one of the doubts that the people bring up with regards to al-istiwa and al-nuzul. As far as al-istiwa, they said, ثُمَّ اسْتَوَى عَلَى الْعَرْشِ. This can't be literal, that Allah rose over the arsh. It can't be literal. And that's because if Allah rose over the arsh, that means that the arsh was above Him before He rose over it. And Allah is the Aliyul A'la. He's supposed to be the most high. Lahu ulu al-qahar, ulu al-dhat, ulu al-qadr. He's supposed to be the most lofty. So how was the throne above Him and then He rose upon it? Don't make parables with Allah. Have the best thoughts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is not restricted to that which the human beings are restricted to. Allah is not restricted to that which the humans are restricted to. Then we have the concept of a nuzul al-ilahi. The Prophet ﷺ, he tells us towards the end of the night, towards the wee hours, the late hours of the night, athuluth al-akhir, athuluth al-akhir, that he says, yanzilu rabbuna, our Lord descends. And the people, they say, well, how does Allah descend towards the lowest part of the heavens? Does He free Himself from the arsh? Are the heavens above Him? What about different time zones? You're in Malaysia, you're in Kuwait, you're in New York. What time is Allah descending, so on and so forth? Allah is always descending. That's su'al dhan billah. That's having bad thoughts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And making examples and parables with Allah, His names, His attributes, and His actions, and restricting Him to what the humans are restricted to. So this is the first and most important concept of husn al-dhan billah, is the correct aqidah and the correct belief in Allah. And that Allah Azza wa Jal, He says about Himself, He says, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. The highest description belongs to Allah. وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. The best of the most beautiful or the most perfect of names belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And as Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentioned about Ibrahim alayhi salam, He said to His people, what do you think about Allah? What are your thoughts about Allah? So that's first and foremost. And that's in brief. And that's a very, very, very long discussion with regards to the people who have incorrect thoughts about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and incorrect beliefs about Allah, His names, His attributes, and His actions. Secondly, is husn al-dhan billah with regards to righteous deeds and with regards to sin and disobedience. If you think that you're going to disobey Allah 24/7 for 40 years out of your life, and then when you become 41 or 50, you're just going to magically turn into this righteous and pious person, and those sins are not going to have any effect upon you, and there's not going to be no seal on your heart or deafness in your ears or blindness in your eyes, and to think that Allah's rahmah and Allah's maghfirah is just some simple easy thing that you can just get out of years of disrespecting Allah. That's not husn al-dhan billah. Husn al-dhan billah is that you work for Allah's mercy. You strive for Allah's mercy. You strive for Allah's forgiveness. And if you make a mistake, you know that He is Ghafur Rahim. If you fall into error, you know that Allah is most merciful, most forgiving. And there's no such thing as suicide. There's no such thing as despair. There's no such thing as I don't want to be a Muslim anymore. There's no such thing as I can't live, I'm ruined. Because Allah is Ghafur Rahim. Allah forgives all sins. So husn al-dhan billah is that you try to do your best. You do righteous deeds, and you know that Allah is forgiving, but you don't say Allah is forgiving, so let me disobey Him. Last but not least, the last thing that I'll mention here is husn al-dhan billah at the time of death, on the deathbed. On the deathbed. When you can't get up, you're extremely sick, you're extremely ill, you have a very bad fever. It is no point now in which a person has bad thoughts of Allah. Allah is not going to forgive me. Allah is going to punish me. Allah is going to waste my good deeds. I'm ruined. I can't lie. As the Prophet ﷺ says, none of you should die. La yamutan. He says, none of you should die illa wa huwa yuhsinu dhanna billah. Except that he has good thoughts of Allah. That Allah is most forgiving, most kind, most merciful. And Allah's rahmah is far more outstretching than any crime that you could have committed. So a person having good thoughts of Allah, as I said, has different manifestations, different usages, different aspects, and different angles. What's important is that it's obligatory to have good thoughts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, your creator, your maker, your Lord, your cherisher, and your ma'bud bil haqq. the true deity of worship, the true God, Allah subhanahu azza wa jal. And as I said before, there are many, many, many other manifestations of proper thought of Allah and improper thought of Allah. And oftentimes people who think they have husnul dhan billah, oftentimes have su'al dhan billah, waliyadu billah, have bad thoughts of Allah. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah and others, especially Ibn Qayyim, they go in and say that most people have bad thoughts of Allah on one level or another, with their tongues or with their actions. Let alone those who have false aqidah, warped aqidah, baseless aqidah, in which they think is the correct aqidah, but it's actually tainted, if not warped, if not totally astray, and causes them to have bad thoughts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam.
My question is about
And before we go forward, sorry, this has nothing to do with Kuwait, but with regards to the United States, if I was asked, my humble opinion is, or what do you, those who say that there are no scholars in the West, I believe that as a manifestation of su'al dhan billah, having very bad thoughts of Allah, is that there will be millions of people in the part of the world, millions, men, women, children, and there's not one learned person among them. It's not one scholar among them. We have North America, Canada, United States, Central America, Mexico, the whole entire Caribbean. How many people are in the Caribbean? Jamaica, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Trinidad. How many people? How many humans? How many Muslims, non-Muslims there? And there's not one learned person among them. Let alone the South American continent, the country of Brazil by itself, Ecuador, Chile, Peru, all of, not one island is among them. Allah Azza wa Jalla, He chose to have all of those people and no learned person to lead them and to guide them. That's su'al dhan billah. It's having bad thoughts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Faddal. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
my question is about yesterday's class, the last hadith you were talking to speak about the three views you said, right? The first view you said the three imams, the three out of the four imams, they said not to the wali not to fast.
Mm-hmm.
And Imam Shafi was in that view, right?
That's correct.
And then on the third view, Imam Shafi, you said that he said you're supposed to fast. The wali.
La. Jazakallah khairan for the follow-up. It was mentioned that Al-Bayhaqi rahimahullah ta'ala, or before that, Sheikh Bassami says, Ba'du muhaddith al-Shafi'iyya. Some of the hadith scholars of the Shafi'i madhab, and not Imam Shafi'i himself. And as we explained many times before, there is the leader of the madhab, or the founder, and then we have the disciples, the atba' and the ashab. And oftentimes, not a few times, oftentimes, there's discrepancies in which Abu Hanifa says something, and his own students may differ. Let alone those Hanafi scholars who came 500 years later, or 700 years later. Shafi'i may take a view, but that doesn't mean that's the view of this Shafi'i scholar. Let alone the fact that Al-Bayhaqi rahimahullah, according to Sheikh Bassam, he says that Imam al-Shafi'i علق القول به على صحة الحديث. Al-Shafi'i stipulated if the hadith is authentic, من مات وعليه صيام صام عنه وليه, then he said I would have taken it. Meaning that Al-Shafi'i rahimahullah is quoted to have said he wasn't sure about the hadith being authentic. He wasn't sure about it. And if it was authentic, then I would have taken it. So as if Bayhaqi rahimahullah said, that's Shafi'i's true view. And that's because the hadith is proven to be authentic. Shafi'i's only stipulation was the hadith being authentic. It's authentic, so as if Shafi'i said it. And we all know the famous statement of Imam Shafi'i, the iconic statement that he made in which he says, إِذَا صَحَّ الْحَدِيث فَهُوَ مَذْهَبِي. When hadith is authentic, then that's my school of thought. That's my direction in which I go. So the concept of a Shafi'i rahimahullah not taking the view, and the concept of a later Shafi'i scholar saying that it was his view because the hadith is authentic, that's the fork in the road there. Clear? Wa yakum. Fadal.
The ruling on holding the mushaf while you pray the nafil prayer.
Okay.
What is that?
Holding the mushaf while praying the nafil prayer. Many of the ulama hold the view that it's permissible. There's nothing wrong with it. La bas. And there are other ulama who say that it shouldn't be done. And they say that you should recite the nafil prayer, the tarawih, the qiyam, the witr, based off of what you memorized, what you know. No matter how few surahs you know, stick to that. Holding the mushaf could be problematic with regards to khushu', turning the page, with regards to the sunnah of the prayer of putting the right over the left. When you make sujood, you make ruku', what's going to happen to the mushaf? Will it be disrespected? So those points are clearly logical. That is a problem you holding it. Ala kulli hal, at the end of the day, the ulama of Islam, they have differed on this. And there are narrations of some of the Sahaba holding their mushafs. Some of the ulama say Aisha radiallahu anha used to do it. So there's room, inshallah. There's room in the issue. It's room. But what's important is for us never to understand is that you do not have to be Sheikh Abdul Basit to recite the prayer at night. You don't have to be Manshawi and Husri. You don't have to be Ahfadh al-Nas, to make prayer at night. If you made 8 rak'at, and when you recited Qul huwallahu ahad, Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq, Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas, and you had khushu', and you were submissive to Allah, and you wanted the reward, it's a virtue. You don't have to know Baqarah and Ali Imran and Nisa and Ma'idah and An'am and A'raf and Anfal and Tawbah and Yunus. You don't have to know that. You see what I'm saying? So in order your tajweed have to be as good as Khalid's. To lead your family in the prayer or to pray at night. You don't have to be a tajweed grandmaster. Next question.
Initials KS from Chicago, Illinois. What is the correct view for covering the face and the hands? Is it mandatory? If a sister doesn't, is she sinning?
Chicago, Illinois. Correct view on covering the face and the hands. If you have the ability to do it, then do it. It's good. Khayrun bila shar. Good without any bad. Do it. It's the safest view. It's the view which has the most precaution. Inshallah, it's closer to piety. It is covering the center of beauty of the woman. The center of beauty after her face could be her hands. Cover your hands and your face if you can. That's the best thing to do. As far as what's the strongest view, then if I say that's the strongest view, someone else says that's the strongest view. And a person says this scholar says the strongest view. Allahu alam. What's the strongest view? The word strongest is relative. You may think that you're a strong man, and then I put you in front of someone else who will toss you like a rag doll. Your strength is relative. It's relative. It's subjective. You feel that you're strong. Someone else may be what? Stronger. What did he say? The coach, his coach is at least what? 6'4", 6'5", roughly. He said one day we were torn. We're out of the country, and I met a player who was from Russia. He said he stood over me and he laughed at me and he said, "Ha ha, little man." 6'5". Well, you wouldn't call anyone 6'5" little in the United States. But standing to someone who's 7 feet, 7'2", 7'3", he called him what? Little man. You little shrimp. So height, strength, these things are always what? Relative. Nisbi. How does say nisbi? Rajih to one person may marjuh to the what? To the next person. What my personal opinion is, one thing. Most of the ulama say, one thing. What I feel makes the most sense, one thing. But what's the strongest view? I can't dictate and determine what's strong and what's weak. Because that's something which is subjective from what? Person to person. You consider it strong, the next item considered to be what? Weak. Or marjuh. Even not weak, but just marjuh. It's not the strongest view. And that is why we say the best thing to do is to wear the niqab or the burqa, cover your face, cover your hands. That's the best thing to do. That's the safest thing to do. That has the most precaution. And inshallah, that is aqrabu lit-taqwa. That's closer to piety. And there's no one in his right mind that's going to differ on the fact that the beauty of a woman is generally focused in her face. No matter what her hair looks like, her hands, her arms, her feet, her chest, her legs, her face. That's the asl of the jamal of a woman. So if the hijab is meant to cover the beauty of the woman and hide it from those non-mahram men who are not supposed to see it and enjoy it, it only makes sense to cover the face. It only makes sense. Okay? So that's the safest and the best thing to do, regardless of my opinion, regardless of what this imam says, that's the safest thing to do. Last but not least, many ulama say, with regards to a woman who does not cover her hands and her face, and they say that she's not sinful, it's permissible not to cover the hands and the face, to go outside in front of non-mahram men, there are conditions. And from those conditions, makeup is not to be worn. And many women, they uncover their hands and their face and they wear makeup. They wear makeup, and that's incorrect, even according to that fatwa. Secondly, they say that a woman is not supposed to live in a place and which is full of perversion and deviation, and which is full of lust, and everyone lusts off of women. Last but not least, they say that if a woman is very beautiful, she's very gorgeous, her covering her hands and her face could be obligatory because it's a fitna for her or for others. Now, if you just look at these three conditions, you'll clearly see there are many women And one could possibly say most women today, they violate those three conditions. How many women don't cover their hands and their face and they wear makeup? How many women don't cover their hands and their face and they live in a land of perversion and sickness? How many women don't cover their hands and their face and they're extremely beautiful, and which is a fitna for them and for others? So it's very important to take the fatwa of the alim with the conditions. Everyone understand this? Last but not least is that you have to have a proof and an evidence for what you're doing. You can't, a sister, if there are two sisters in the masjid, one covers the hands and the face, one doesn't cover the hands and the face. The sister wearing the niqab and the gloves, she says, sister, fear Allah, cover your hands and your face. The other sister says, it's differences of opinion. It's difference of opinion. It's khilaf. No doubt there's khilaf. But khilaf is not dalil. Khilaf is not a proof to do something. If you've been given the fatwa that it's permissible to do, if you feel that that's the correct view, that's the dalil. And her criticizing you, talking about you, looking down upon you, kicking you out of the masjid, as many ignorant sisters do who think that they're on sunnah. That's the problem, and that's when you want to say it's khilaf. La tunkir alayya, la tunkiri. You can't make inkar. ليش؟ لأن المسألة خلافية. There are different views. The ulama of Islam different on this issue. You can't say I'm a bad Muslim, I'm an evil Muslim for me taking that view. But that is not the dalil. You have to take that view because either you were taught that's what you were given, or that's what you believe is the correct view. Do you understand? The khilaf of the ulama is not a proof and an evidence for someone to do something. It's not a dalil to do something. There's a huge difference between the two. So when it comes to ijma', consensus, when it comes to ikhtilaf or khilaf, difference of opinion, there are many people, where if not most of them, who don't understand the basic principles of these things. Taqleed and ittiba' and ijtihad, they don't understand the correct principles. And oftentimes people are overzealous. You find someone talking about someone, criticizing them over an issue in which most of the ulama of Islam said the opposite. You can have your view, that that's the correct view, but how are you making tabdeel and tabdeel on someone? And 99% of the ulama said that. It's a huge problem, a huge problem. All right, so we have to learn the correct way, and all of these things are summed up in the philosophy of empty your cup. Learn the right way, get rid of the bad way, unlearn what you think that you've learned, and do it the proper scientific way, the way of ilm, of how to be a blind follower, how to be an independent scholar, how to be a student of knowledge, how to give dawah, how to give advice, how to make inkar, how not to make inkar, how to take advice, how to take a criticism, how to criticize, etc. So these issues are not issues in which we're to fight each other over and wage war over with each other over. All right? So in brief, the best thing to do is to cover your hands and your face. That's the best thing to do. You can't lose by doing that. Inshallah ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam.
Next question from online. Initials MA from London, UK. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. May Allah increase you in good. What is the ruling on eating cheese with rennet in it? What is the safest and strongest opinion?
Questions from the UK. Eating cheese with rennet in it. Safest opinion, the strongest opinion. Of course, the safest opinion is to avoid it. Avoid cheese altogether, or avoid that type of cheese that's made with that type of byproduct. And there are other things within cheese or cheeses and other things as well, sauces, bread, all types of stuff, sugar, brown and white, donuts, the list goes on. Different products and chemicals and things that they use to cut the cost of production. So the safest view is to avoid those cheeses, period. If you can't avoid all cheese, you really like cheese, you're a cheese lover, then eat the cheese that doesn't contain rennet or other things besides rennet. Everyone understand this? Everybody clear on this before we go further? When we talk about rennet, and we talk about alcysteine, and we talk about all these different byproducts that come from animals, whether they're pigs or cows, in which they use to cut costs. They use things when they pasteurize things to preserve things, to make it taste a certain way, look a certain way. And oftentimes it comes from unlawful animals, whether it's swine, khinzir, billah, enzymes of the pig, or whether it is from an animal that's lawful to eat, but the animal wasn't slaughtered. The animal wasn't killed in the zabiha way, such as a cow. They use all types of things from the bones of the cow for sugar. Oftentimes you think you're buying brown sugar, but it's actually white sugar that's been dyed and colored. So the deeper you go into that rabbit hole of foods and modern foods, the scarier it becomes. And it just more extremism begets more extremism. The concept of the meats, halal, haram, cheese, soap, shampoo, it'll never end. And oftentimes people, they say, well, we have a halal pizzeria, our pepperoni is halal. But the cheese, full of khinzir. The sauce, full of khinzir. The bread, read about commercial bread. Don't take this from me. Don't take it from me. Okay? And my doubts, my shubuhat. Read yourself about many types of commercial bread and dough and flour, yeast. You'll find all types of things involved in that. So therefore, if we know something for sure, we avoid it. We don't know something for sure, and it's originally halal, that's one thing. Once we open up Pandora's box, it's not going to close. Everything will be haram. You won't drink water, you won't smell the air. So we have to be careful, and we have to be balanced. You understand these words? You have to be careful, and you have to be balanced. Allah alam, maybe some of the brothers may be too young for this, maybe some of the older brothers, but when you were in high school back in the day, or middle school, Abdul Qawi, remember the Halal and Haram book? Remember that book? That book destroyed your whole world. Everything is haram. Kiva, elves, Oreos, M&Ms, kullu shay. Your favorite snacks was in that book. The Halal and Haram book. You know this book I'm talking about? You guys ever seen this book?
No.
Maybe this is back in the day.
Classic.
I had a classic, the Sheikh said, So you read that book, you open it up, everything is impermissible. It's a problem, yani. May Allah help us all. Al-Muhim, avoid the cheese that has written in it or anything other which is haram. Avoid it. If you can't avoid it, or if you feel that it's permissible because it's been transformed into a different substance, istahala or istahala ta'aynuhu, it turned into a different substance, then that's a masala of ilm, which the ulama say with regards to things being modified and morphosized, quote unquote, turned into something else. It's no longer gelatin, it's no longer this, it's no longer that. That's a discussion among the ulama of al-Islam. Safest thing to do is to avoid it. And last but not least, if you see brothers eating halal pizza, don't call them innovators or kuffar. Wallahu alam.
Next question is from
Walaikum salam.
London, UK, initials AC, is becoming a lawyer kufr akbar?
Questions from where again?
London, UK.
London, UK. Is becoming a lawyer kufr akbar? I believe this question was posted maybe about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, something like this. We tried our best to give some type of detail and shed some type of light on the issue. At the end of the day, I would humbly say, is that a person could argue and say that Muslims need lawyers. It's a necessity. If we live in these lands, we live in these countries, and as we said before, and Allah knows best, Allah says, وَلَا تَدْرِ نَفْسٌ بِأَيْ أَرْضٍ تَمُوتُ. No soul knows in which land it will die. But we know what Allah has shown us is that the majority of the people are going to die in the UK, die in America, Germany, Italy, where they've migrated to, or where they were born. Who's going back to Algeria and Egypt and Syria? Most people are going to remain in these Western countries. Most people, it's the reality. So with that being said, if the Muslims are going to live here, have children, have businesses, own cars, own this, own that, travel, they're going to need legal representation. They're going to need people that will prevent them from being discriminated against and oppressed and wronged, and people who know the system, people who are in the system. So someone, I didn't say me, but someone could make the argument and say that lawyers are a necessity. Does that change the ruling that it's not kufr akbar? Them dealing with those man-made laws, the laws of the Tawhut, okay? The whole concept of وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ, etc. That's a discussion in itself. But the concept of certain things being a necessity, all right? Does that mean that you should be a lawyer? You sacrifice your soul for the benefit of the people? You don't necessarily have to do that as well. But someone has to do it. Someone has to deal with politics. And if not, all of the Muslims will suffer. If no one is learning from among them of the rules, and they can do whatever they want to the Muslims because the Muslims don't have lawyers. The Muslims don't have no representation. The Muslims don't have no one dealing with these things. This is dangerous. So that's what I said the other night, and that's what I'll say now with regards to what someone could possibly say. Wallahu alam. Is it kufr akbar or not? Allahu alam. Allah knows best. before we move on to the next question, is that we have to understand something. Okay, understanding is one thing, and being convinced is something else. You don't always have to be convinced, but at least understand. So many people, they say, well, you didn't answer the question. Or that's not what the questioner asked you. You're playing games with the questioner. You're dancing around the issue. You're doing this, you're doing that. We say you don't understand our style. And rightfully so. We don't expect you to understand our style, nor do we want you to. But if you're going to watch the video and comment on the video, then at least out of basic respect, have an understanding of the method. And that is oftentimes people, they get caught up on the seed and they neglect the actual fruit and the flower. They get caught up on an issue and not the actual ruling, the thamara. What is the ruling? Is it kufr akbar or not to be a lawyer? That's theoretical. That does not change the fact that you still want to need a what? A lawyer. Muslims still need lawyers. Everyone understand this? Is it permissible to make this statement or not? What's the core content of the statement? What's meant by that statement? What does it necessitate? And oftentimes don't get stuck on can you say it or not. So oftentimes you have to look into the content and the fruit of the ruling instead of just posing a hypothetical ruling and then that's it. It's deeper than that. So if it's kufr akbar or not, is that going to stop the people from going and getting lawyers? Everyone understand this? And this Shaykh Rabbani rahimahullah ta'ala, when he was asked years ago about women studying medicine, women being nurses and doctors, specifically nurses, he says no. This is haram. You're not wearing your hijab, you're free mixing with men, you're touching the opposite sex, you're looking at the awrah, it's unnecessary. So then the questioner asked him and said, yeah, Sheikh, well, what about the Muslims in Jordan who have to go to the hospital? What about the necessity of women being looked after and their medical needs being taken care of? You know what the Sheikh said? He says women are going to do it regardless. They're going to go to school, they're going to become doctors, they're going to become nurses. And it's no need for me to give my fatwa supporting them to do it because it's a necessity. People are going to do it regardless. If I say you can't be a nurse, are all the Muslim women in Jordan want to stop being nurses? No, they're not. So I'm sticking to my view that they can do it. And those sisters who want to avoid it will avoid it. And the other ones are going to do it no matter what. So the point is not, can you be a nurse or not? I'm not here to debate on that or to talk about it. I'm trying to make a point of how you look at things. You could agree with Sheikh Al-Albani, you could disagree. But you got to respect his rationale. He's looking at the issue. I'm going to say what I believe that it's haram. People are still going to do it, so let me stick to my guns. And oftentimes we can be asked the question, and we may not answer the specific question, but answer the actual product of the question, the fruit of the question. What is actually going to be done physically based off of this issue? And many people we know that they like to or they enjoy floating on the surface and they hate to dive. They just like to float on the surface. They don't actually go under the water. So we live in the United States. We live in the UK. What is the need of having a lawyer? What is the need of having people in politics? What's the need of having people who have knowledge of banks? Okay, what's the need of having doctors when your wife is pregnant and she needs to give birth? So oftentimes something may not be permissible. Something could be kufr, akbar or asghar. But sometimes somebody, has to do it. And oftentimes, not all of the time, but oftentimes the person has to actually be a Muslim as well to minimize the damage. And sometimes some people, they sacrifice themselves for the greater good of the Muslims. Will that be accepted from them? Will Allah forgive them of that? Perhaps. Perhaps. Someone has to do it. Politics is a dirty game. But what? Someone has to be involved in politics. And if not, everyone what? And that's going to be a problem. So we have to be realistic. And Allah knows best.
Next question initials. AA from Miami, Florida. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh Mufti. Could you please share your thoughts concerning the balance between following the customs of one's location and adopting a distinct Islamic identity?
This will be our last question tonight. With regards to, please give your opinion or your advice or your tips on a balanced view with regards to following the customs of your country and taking a distinct Islamic identity. In reality, I don't think there's a difference between the two. I don't think there's a contradiction between the two. You can have a distinctive Islamic appearance or personality and still follow the customs of your country. So in the United States, we wear thobes. Not all of us, but many of us do. Some brothers wear thobe every day. Some brothers wear it on Friday. Some brothers wear it when they travel. Some don't. But a lot of brothers wear thobes in the United States. So you find many people who have a problem with this. Whether it's on the video, why are you wearing thobes? Why are you watching our channel? This is a real question. If you don't like it, then do what? Don't watch HadithDisciple. No one's forcing you to watch it. If you think it's a dumb or stupid video, why are you actually what? Supporting it. But the bottom line is, brothers have problems with us being in the gym wearing thobes. And they have a problem with you wearing a thobe. You're trying to be like an Arab. You're trying to be an Arab. Thobes are not even from the Arabs. They're from the Persians, etc., 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 etc. Tayyib. Okay. Jazakallah khairan. I'm not Arab. I'm not Arab. I'm not Persian. I'm a black American. That's where I'm from. That's where my family is from, so on and so forth. That's my heritage. That's my roots. So I can't wear a thobe, or I can wear a thobe. But when I do wear a thobe, what type of thobe am I wearing? Do I have on a scarf? Am I wearing an igal? Do people overseas have pins in their pockets like this? Do people wear Clark Wallabies? Do people wear shell tops? Do they have Argyle socks on? Do you find people wearing a thobe and a hoodie? A thobe and an army fatigue jacket on? A thobe and a scully? So the point I'm trying to get to is what? Is that by me wearing a thobe, which is not from my original culture, I'm still identified and representative of my what? Of my culture. The shoes I have on, the socks I have on, the hat that I have on, the watch that I'm wearing, and how I wear and rock my thobe. So oftentimes there's not a contradiction. If you're from Malaysia or Indonesia, and the people traditionally wear this style of clothing, this izar or these pants, you can do that and have them above your ankles. You can make a longer version that covers your odor better. If you come from Pakistan or Afghanistan, you can sunnify the traditional clothing if it's even against the sunnah. So the point is, instead of looking at it as two different things, how about make them one? I'm from America. I'm wearing Timbs. I'm wearing jeans. They're above my ankles. I identify myself as a Muslim. I have on a kufi, but it's an American kufi. And everyone knows it's an American kufi. I'm an American Muslim. So oftentimes we should bring the things together instead of pushing them away. And everyone who anyone that can see you, see you're clearly American. You go overseas, they know that you're American or British. Even though you're dressing like everyone else because of your, I don't like the term too much, swag. Some people say that's a bad word. Some people say that swag means secretly we are gay. That's the original usage of the term. Before the event of the rainbow being put on storefronts, there was the word swag. Secretly we are gay. Allahu alam, is that true or not? But some people, they say, or overseas, they'll know that you're an American or you're British. They know that you're not from Africa, you're not from, they know you're American or British. Why? Because of your swag. People from Africa don't have on shoes like that. They wear sandals. People from Saudi don't wear socks like that. So you can be representative, or you can represent your culture or your locale and still have a distinct Islamic identity. And even if something isn't Islamic, it doesn't mean that the Muslims don't wear it. So even if a thobe isn't from the Arabs, it doesn't mean the Arabs don't wear it. And what do people think about when they think of Arabs, except for what? Islam. There's no doubt about that in the Middle East. And there are Christian Arabs, there are Jewish Arabs, there are Freemason Arabs, there are Arab atheists, there are all types of different Arabs. But that's not the stereotype. The first thing you think about the Middle East is what? Islam, Arabic, Muslim. Everyone understand this? So the point is that there is no clash. You can dress like a Muslim, whatever style that may be. You don't have to wear Saudi thobe. You want to wear a Moroccan thobe. You want to wear an izar. You want to look like the brothers from Nigeria, wherever you're from. But it doesn't mean that you have your pants beneath your ankle. And it doesn't mean that your head is uncovered. And it doesn't mean that your wife is not covered properly. No one said that she has to wear a black abaya from Saudi. No one said it had to be black. No one said it had to be of this style. It can be whatever style, as long as it fulfills the conditions of the sunnah. And that it's not tight, it's loose, it's keva. And the same applies to men. No one stops you from identifying yourself as a Muslim. And also keeping your what? Your customs and your culture. All right? So be balanced. And instead of fighting and pushing, embrace. That's a very important HadithDisciple. You don't always embrace, but do what? Don't always attack and push, but what? Embrace. So in actuality, they become one instead of them being two things. Wallahu alam. Jazakumullah khairan.